Hunley was the first to play an important role as an actual weapon of war. Built in Mobile, Alabama, and launched in July 1863, the Hunley was co-designed and financed by lawyer-turned-inventor Horace Lawson Hunley, who actually lost his life later that year in the second of the small craft's repeated sinkings.
Chasing knowledge and creativity comes with unexpected risks, and sometimes even life-threatening ones. Inventors are people that have gone extra mile to create things that makes our life easier or has the ability to reduce stress. Driven by their goal to make their dream projects a reality, these inventors have put their lives on the line, and at the end of the day, they will never be forgotten for their contributions to society. Here are some cases where inventors tragically lost their lives to their own creations.
Continuing coverage of the Titan submersible hearings. Today we heard the testimony from a man who went to the bottom of the ocean with Ocean Gate and resurfaced with red flags.
Stockton Rush. Stockton Rush was the mind behind the Titan submersible, designed for adventure tourists to explore the Titanic wreck. During a voyage with 4 others on board, the Titan imploded just 1,600 feet from the Titanic's remains, killing Rush and 4 other persons. Before this fatal journey, Rush had brushed off warnings from experts. In 2019, Carl Stanley, a deep-sea explorer and owner of Stanley's submarines, took a test dive with Rush. Afterward, Stanley raised concerns about the dangers of hastening preparations, but Rush dismissed the advice, responding in an email that Stanley should keep his opinions to himself. William Bullock. Bullock, a newspaper editor, transformed the printing industry with his groundbreaking improvements to the rotary printing press. His invention allowed a continuous roll of paper, miles long, to feed automatically into the press, eliminating the need for manual loading. Thanks to his design, factories could produce 8,000 to 10,000 sheets per hour, drastically boosting printing speeds and efficiency. While installing one of his own printing presses, Bullock's leg was caught in the machinery. The injury crushed his foot, leading to a gangrene infection that claimed his life just days later.
William Bullock accidentally got his foot caught in the machinery. The injury was severe and led to an infection which ultimately caused his death a few days later at the age of 55.
Robert Cocking. Cocking, a watercolor painter with a passion for air travel, designed a parachute in 1837 and proudly showcased it at London's Vauxhall Gardens. On its first test, he detached his parachute from a hot air balloon, only to plummet hundreds of feet to his death. According to some reports, when his body was recovered, curious onlookers had already taken his watch, snuff box, and even his glass eye. While Cocking's parachute design faded into obscurity, he is remembered as the first recorded person to die testing a parachute. Franz Reichelt. Reichelt, famously called the Flying Tailor, decided to test his homemade parachute in the boldest way possible, by jumping off the Eiffel Tower. A skilled dressmaker by trade, Reichelt had been working on his parachute design for a while. Even though aviation experts dismissed his idea, he refused to give up. Confident in his creation, Reichelt chose to test it himself. On February 4, 1912, he shocked officials at the Eiffel Tower by announcing he would replace the test dummy with himself. With a crowd of spectators, reporters, and cameras watching, Reichelt leaped from the tower, trusting his 20-pound parachute. Sadly, his invention failed, and he fell to his death, leaving a tragic mark on history both literally and figuratively. Henry Smolinski and Harold Blake. Smolinski and Blake set out to build the world's first flying car, the AVE Mizar. Inspired by a star in the Big Dipper, they combined 2 unlikely machines, a Cessna Skymaster airplane and a Ford Pinto car, to bring their vision to life. While the project faced some issues early on, the duo had a few minor successes during test flights. Confident in their progress, they attempted another test flight on September 11, 1973, at Ventura County Airport in California. Soon after takeoff, black smoke poured from the flying car. Moments later it crashed, killing both Smolinski and Blake and putting an end to their ambitious dream.
On September 11, 1973, Henry and Hal tested the Cessna Skymaster and Ford Pinto hatchback hybrid near Oxnard Airport. During the flight, something went wrong and the plane struck a tree before smashing into a pickup truck. Both Smolinski and Blake died instantly.
Thomas Midgley Jr. Midgley Jr. is known for inventing leaded gasoline and the chemical used in air conditioning and refrigeration. He later contracted polio and tragically died in a device he created to help him get in and out of bed. While the public was told his death was an accident, the New York Times Magazine reported that it was privately considered a suicide. Either way, it was one of his own inventions that played a part in his demise. Luis Jimenez. Jimenez, the sculptor who created the famous Blucifer at Denver International Airport, tragically died when parts of his sculpture fell on him. He had been working on the piece for almost 10 years under contract with the airport when the accident occurred. The 32-foot-tall, 9,000-pound sculpture broke loose from a hoist while being moved and crushed Jimenez against a steel support beam. The impact severed an artery in his leg, and he passed away before reaching the hospital. Marie Curie. Marie Curie and her husband Pierre Curie were the ones who discovered radium and polonium. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. Curie passed away from aplastic pernicious anemia, a condition caused by her exposure to radioactive materials during her work. This happened 31 years after she won her first Nobel Prize. Curie also won a Nobel Prize for isolating radium, and is still the only person to have received the award in 2 different scientific fields. Otto Lilienthal. Otto Lilienthal, the man who inspired the Wright brothers, was the first person to make safe and repeatable gliding flights. Before his achievements, flying seemed like an impossible dream. He was the first to prove that gliders could fly successfully more than once. On August 10, 1896, Lilienthal tried a new technique called shifting weight while flying a glider at 50 feet. Unfortunately, the glider lost lift, stalled, and crashed, causing him to break his neck and spine. He passed away the next day.
Until his plane veered off and crashed, resulting in him breaking his neck. He died the next day in a Berlin hospital.
His last words in the hospital were, "Opfer müssen gebracht werden," which means, "Small sacrifices must be made." Alexander Bogdanov. Alexander Bogdanov was a Russian physician, writer, politician, and part-time inventor. During the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, he was jailed for opposing Vladimir Lenin. Miraculously, he talked his way out of death row and returned to medicine, where he became obsessed with blood. Bogdanov created a unique philosophy called techtology, which is now considered an early form of systems theory. He founded the Institute for Hematology and believed blood transfusion was the key to curing many diseases. To prove his theory, he experimented on himself by transfusing blood from a patient with malaria and tuberculosis. He died 2 days later, on April 7, 1928, but the patient slowly recovered. Horace Lawson Hunley. Horace Lawson Hunley is known for inventing the submarine. He created early models of hand-powered submarines, with the most famous one named after him, the H.L. Hunley. His first prototype, however, ended in tragedy when it trapped 7 sailors underwater and caused their deaths. Determined, Hunley redesigned the submarine and created a new version, the H.L. Hunley, which he personally commanded. On October 15, 1863, while testing the submarine off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, it failed to surface again, resulting in the loss of the crew, including Hunley himself. Max Valier. Valier was one of the first people to see the potential of rockets. He founded the German Verein für Raumschifffahrt, or Spaceflight Society, which is considered an early inspiration for 20th century space missions, including the Apollo moon mission. Between 1928 and 1929, Valier worked with Fritz von Opel to create rocket-powered cars. The Spaceflight Society focused on developing liquid-fueled rocket vehicles. Valier even tested a rocket car powered by liquid propulsion. Sadly, in 1930, Valier died at 35 after an explosion during one of his experiments. Without proper safety precautions, he was sitting too close to a combustion chamber while testing a mix of kerosene and oxygen. After 2 successful tests, his excitement led him to try a third, which turned out to be his last. Sabin Arnold von Sochacki. Ukrainian chemist Sabin Arnold von Sochacki is often credited with inventing luminescent paint. which contained radium, a substance discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie in 1898. Von Sochaki's company, the Radium Luminous Material Corporation, opened multiple factories in the U.S. to produce glowing watch dials. Later, female workers at these factories sued the company after experiencing harmful radiation exposure. In the end, von Sochaki also fell victim to the effects of radiation. He died in 1928 from aplastic anemia, a condition caused by damage to his bone marrow from prolonged radiation exposure. Karl Suchek. Czech stuntman Karl Suchek became famous in 1984 after surviving a barrel ride over Niagara Falls.
The famous Canadian stuntman became famous after his jump from Niagara Falls with his invention called capsule. In 1985, he found a sponsor to fund a jump from the top of the Astrodome Indoor Stadium in Houston, Texas.
Sadly, just a few months later, he passed away while testing a new barrel with shock-absorbing features. Carroll was dropped from the top of the Houston Astrodome into a water tank, but instead of landing in the water, his barrel hit the edge of the tank. He died from his injuries in the hospital shortly after. Cowper Phipps Coles. Coles was an inventor and a captain in the Royal Navy who created a revolving gun turret during the Crimean War. This turret was later installed on several British ships. Over time, his design became the standard for all warships, especially after engines replaced sails. In 1866, the Royal Navy decided to build the HMS Captain, a warship designed by Coles as an experiment. But Coles had been absent for most of the ship's construction due to a long illness, which led to the iron-hulled steamship being overweight and unstable. On the night of September 7, 1870, HMS Captain capsized during a storm, resulting in the loss of 472 lives. Among the victims was Coles, who was 51 years old and died along with his invention, Mitrofan Nedelin. The Nedelin catastrophe is easily the worst disaster on this list. It caused a massive loss of life and was a major blow to the Soviet government in many ways. The accident happened at the Baikonur Cosmodrome test range while the Soviet Union was developing the R-16 ICBM. In October 1960, the prototype missile's jet fuel exploded, creating a massive fireball. Over 150 people lost their lives in the disaster, including Mitrofan Nedelin, the head of the missile development program, and a decorated air marshal who had been instrumental in developing the R-16. The Soviets kept the details of the disaster secret until 1989, when they finally revealed the truth.
On October 24, 1960, at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the Soviet Union was poised for a historic launch. The R-16, a formidable intercontinental ballistic missile, stood ready on the launch pad. Technical malfunctions and errors set off a disastrous chain of events.
Fred Duesenberg. Fred was a skilled automobile designer and a pioneer ahead of his time, with a passion for fast sports cars. In 1921, Fred's racing car, the Duesenberg, became the first American car to win the Grand Prix at Le Mans. But he did not make much money from his innovations before and after his death. In 1932, he was driving his new Duesenberg at high speeds when the car flipped over. While recovering from his injuries, he caught pneumonia and passed away, but his tragic death didn't end the brand. Today, Duesenbergs are still considered some of the most expensive and important collector cars in the world. Valerian Abakovsky. At just 25 years old, Soviet engineering prodigy Valerian Abakovsky created the Aerowagon, a unique mix of a car and a train, powered by an airplane engine. The aim was to shorten the travel time between distant Russian cities. On July 24, 1921, Abakovsky and Soviet communist Fyodor Sergeyev were among those testing the Aerowagon. The vehicle made it to the city of Tula from Moscow, but on the way back to the capital, it derailed. Abakovsky and 5 of the 21 Soviet officials on board lost their lives, marking the end of one of the era's most ambitious inventions in a devastating failure. Orel Vleku. After completing his engineering studies at Munich University in Germany, Orel Vleku worked at Opel, quickly earning numerous awards in international competitions for his groundbreaking airplane designs. By the age of just 31, he had built the world's first all-metal airplane, the Vleku 3, which was the third in a series of planes he named after himself. On September 13, 1913, while living his dream and testing his previous model, the Vleku II, over the Carpathian Mountains, Vleku crashed and lost his life. Michael Dacre. Michael Dacre had a big dream: to create the world's first flying taxi. He was a British aviation pioneer, a decorated veteran of the British Air Force, and the managing director of Aviation Limited, a company based in the UK. Those who knew him said he was always working and dreaming, constantly thinking of ways to improve life for regular people through his ideas. His biggest goal was to build a fleet of flying taxis that would carry passengers from Heathrow Airport to central London in just 4 minutes, with tickets priced around £50. Sadly, Dacre didn't live to see his dream come true. In 2009, at the age of 53, he died in a crash during the first test flight of his flying taxi prototype, making intelligent guesses on how the command applied to each unique situation the machine was put in. With this unique ability, search and rescue operations were a breeze, needing no input to perform complex tasks on their own. Compared to the Lycago, Aliengo was lighter and more robust, made from reinforced carbon fiber. It was able to carry about 15 kilograms of weight while moving at a top speed of 3 meters per second, faster than all other quadruped robots on the market. These features made it a considerable choice for assurance in construction sites, warehouses, crime scenes, and places where disasters may have occurred. The message was quite simple. Come what may, Aliengo has got you covered. With impressive feats and an aggressive marketing strategy, the product was met with great success, setting the stage for yet another improved model slated to be unveiled and released the following year. Excitement brewed in 2019 when Unitree Robotics once again pushed the limits of modern technology with the famous B1 model, hitting the market at a famous starting cost of $30,000.
With EDU version of Aliengo or B1, so you can put any sensor you want and to do the integration integrated with the robot system.
The Unitree B1 came packed with many new features, but as we shall see, this came at a cost. Though the B1 launched with a heavy 18,000 mAh battery, it was promised to give only 2 hours of non-stop operation. This was like a letdown to many people, who expected improved optimizations to guarantee at least 5 hours of usage with each charge. It seemed Wang and his team tried to accomplish so much with this one that it came at the cost of power. So much so that cranking up the battery capacity by a huge margin was by no means good enough. But it begs the question, what features come at the great cost of substantial battery life? Let's find out. Official sources show that the B1 can work in all weather conditions: snow, hail, rain, you name it. Built with load carrying and expansion in mind, its increased strength is enough to transport grown men across impressive distances without a breakdown. With multiple camera sensors all over, it can perceive things at better rates with full scene coverage. At its core, it contains a more powerful processor capable of giving more accurate insights on the environment around the machine. Now able to swim over long distances with heavy loads, the B1 arguably has what it takes to face the high-level needs of industries and homes around the world. Now finding guaranteed success among niche consumers scattered among different industries, Wang and his team aimed higher. They wanted to reach a much broader market. But to do that, they had to strip down a lot of features while keeping the core aspects of the models interesting enough to garner attention. They had to figure out what could make the average person care about owning such an expensive device. After many months of difficult decisions and cut corners, Unitree Robotics would make their leap of faith into the consumer market with the launch of their new budget models.
Unitree has made a name for itself as a more affordable alternative to its robotics competitors.
The Go 1 series and the A1 model. The company was testing the waters with these models, transitioning from niche industrial application to a more consumer-friendly approach. The new models were built to be affordable, accessible, and versatile. They promised to be the ideal machines for everyone, from hardcore tech enthusiasts to the average person with a minute interest in robotics. The company also wished the products could be used in educational institutions for assistance within the classroom, like handing out notebooks or assisting at the library. Sales figures indicate that both models sold very well. However, it seemed the Go 1 lineup was more accepted among consumers because of how much they could do at a relatively low price. For context, the Go 1 series launched with 3 models: the Go 1 Air, Go 1 Edu, and the Go 1 Standard Edition. The Go 1 Air was the most affordable of all 3, designed to be used by everybody. Entering the market at a well-appreciated price of $2,700, this model was most suitable for the simplest tasks and basic navigation. Though it seemed more like a gimmick from a critical point of view, it was good enough for hobbyists and beginners who were interested in robotics, and it sold very well. The Go 1 Edu had the most features, designed to be the budget device for schools and research institutions. Launching at $8,500, this model was equipped with highly advanced sensors and capabilities powered by AI. Compared with the Go 1 Air, this model was much better with features supporting the most complex programming, studied environments in excellent detail, and made intelligent decisions based on things it studies automatically. Many developers loved the products, mostly for how much they could program the machine to do for them. The standard Go 1 model was the ideal balance between both models, giving the right compromise between cost and functionality. Compared to the Go 1 Air, it had better sensors and improved mobility, but pales in comparison to the Go 1 Edu. Launching at a much better price of $3,500, it was ideal for tech enthusiasts and educational institutions wanting great features, but not willing to spend the extra buck for the more expensive model.
Robot jumping, spinning, getting harassed, climbing stairs, and just turning up.
Thanks to the competitive price of all 3 models, the Go 1 lineup was praised for bringing high-performance robotics to a much wider audience. They were designed with the average person in mind, with a simple setup that only required pushing a plug to get started. The only downside that didn't sit right with most consumers was the battery, with the Go 1 Air running with a measly 6,000 mAh battery with just over an hour of peak performance. The standard model ran with a slightly better 9,000 mAh battery, able to keep the machine running for just over 2 hours. Thankfully, they had something much more interesting to offer in this aspect. Launching at the famous asking price of just under $10,000, the A1 model was like the older brother to the Go 1 models. This model was geared towards more advanced users and developers who wanted more features than anything the Go 1 series could offer. On a basic level, the A1 was able to do everything the Go 1 series could, but much better. It had a more robust design with powerful actuators that made it suitable for a much wider variety of applications, including the more demanding research and development tasks. The A1 model also had a much heavier 12,000 mAh battery, able to function at peak performance for 3 hours. Wang's attempt to penetrate the consumer market was met with great success, inspiring creativity among young people looking to get into the market. All his models were much more practical than anticipated, with users and reviewers surprised by how much they liked the machine despite not needing it all the time. Their success was without rivalry. Nobody could compete with them on this level. But not for long, when a rival takes notes. As expected with most markets, while Wang and his team were enjoying great success with their best-selling models, another company was taking notes in the background, ready to storm the market with their new and improved products. They wanted to expand the use of these robots far beyond domestic and industrial uses. These people thought much further. While Wang and his team at Unitree Robotics were taking their ideas to thousands of homes and industries, this company would be taking them to the military. They had been at work ever since the success of the Lycago, aiming at producing a much smarter robot dog built from the ground up for working in the military. This model would be equipped with the best tools for the most dangerous missions, with some of them armed with weapons built to absorb recoil, and the result of these endeavors was the Alpha Dog. However, this was not revealed, as rather than revealing the product as something built for the military,
China's military has released this video of a 4-legged robot marching through a field with an automatic rifle.
It was advertised like a standard Go 1 or A1 model, a standard robot dog capable of playing and assisting in a wide array of situations. Revealed by Violin Intelligent Technology Corporation on April 2, 2021, this groundbreaking robotic machine was showcased with all the abilities of the typical robot dog. Except it could move up to 15 kilometers per hour and get itself back up from the most difficult positions after being thrown about multiple times. At first, the teams at Violin Corporation thought that people would take it as nothing more than a repackaged product made by the competition. But the reception was mostly positive, prompting the company to plan another exhibition in just 6 days. On April 8th, the Violin Corporation demonstrated how the technology could be used to assist visually impaired and physically disabled individuals. Wanting to be as unique and practical as possible, every presentation was carefully put together to make a case for how the product could be used beyond anything the competition was offering. Where it stood out the most was in the creative ways it used AI, as it was advertised to intuitively analyze nearby human responses to its actions to accurately predict what behavioral patterns are most preferred without being told about it. The Alpha Dog was advertised as a machine built from the ground up to please the user according to preference, a feat many viewers found interesting. At this point, Violin hadn't clarified that they were appealing to the military, but even then, the higher-ups at Unitree Robotics knew. Wang and his team wanted to be the first to be directly involved with the military, or more specifically, they wanted to do so before the Violin Corporation. The big problem was, they wouldn't be quick enough to pull it off as they lacked the time and the needed resources. They needed help, and fast. The stakes were high and the future was looking grim. Would Unitree Robotics be able to get their product to the military as intended? Now stay tuned. This is where it gets interesting. Donning the uniform. Weeks later, Unitree Robotics went into negotiations with Chinese weapons manufacturer Kestrel Defense. This was a bold yet important move for Wang's company for multiple reasons. First off, Kestrel at this point had an established reputation for making innovative cutting-edge technologies for the Chinese military, and Wang saw huge potential in a long-term partnership with this company in producing a good product that would be most useful in national defense. Secondly, their previous products were very practical in various ways, so it made sense for Wang to approach them for help. Given their experience with making weapons, they no doubt knew the most practical ways a robotic dog would be an asset to the military.
The robot dogs are programmed to conduct reconnaissance, identify the enemy, and strike the target.
At this point, Kestrel Defense had built many advanced systems, including a high-tech reconnaissance ball, a 3D wall-piercing radar, and a bulletproof, highly efficient combat exoskeleton. If there was any company Wang had to partner with for his plan to work, it had to be Kestrel Defense. Thankfully, negotiations didn't take long to settle, with Kestrel Defense agreeing to help Wang and his team produce a machine that would be geared towards the military. While Unitree Robotics provides the tech, Kestrel Defense would design it in the most efficient ways. To make this as practical as possible, multiple questionnaires were sent to military personnel within and outside the country, and they gave the feedback necessary on what kind of machine they would want with them on the battlefield. With all the information they needed, both companies went to work. They intended to make the best machine following the feedback they got, and the best machine was what they created. On May 29, 2023, during the Golden Dragon exercise at a joint drill session with Cambodia, the robotic army was showcased in its full glory. Each of the robotic dogs had features that blew the minds of the soldiers who examined them. But before we get into details, brace yourself, because this is where it gets crazy. According to the reports, each of these robotic dogs was armed with an assault rifle, built to resist the recoil that came with each consecutive shot. They were remote-controlled and designed to perform basic military protocols like reconnaissance, surveillance, and direct support to soldiers on the battlefield. They were each built to think for themselves with basic commands, with inbuilt controls on how much they could rely on their intuition to detect and respond adequately to sudden threats. Prior leaks and rumors indicated that Kestrel Defense was getting too ambitious, hoping to create an intelligent battlefield robot to handle impossible missions. Some expressed fear, as the thought of a robotic army triggers memories of doom from famous post-apocalyptic movies. However, based on official reports on how the machines performed in various conditions, it was safe to say there was nothing to worry about. These machines would be restricted to the battlefield and wouldn't be found anywhere near domestic or industrial settlements. They would be a great asset to the military, handling the most dangerous weapon systems and safeties remotely. With this accomplished, it is crazy to see how far Wang and his team have come from being aspiring engineers and programmers to leading pioneers in advanced robotics and everything alike. Wang's wild dreams had become a reality, with his technologies known by tech enthusiasts all over the world. However, that doesn't mean he's done with everything. There is a lot more to come, and the world is eagerly waiting. So, what do you think? Are there valid reasons to be concerned about China's robotic army? If not, what makes you so sure about it? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.